Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all our speakers and viewers joining us from across the globe. Welcome to the virtual event of Freedom Hour, an online discussion hosted by the Asia Freedom Institute, a nonprofit organization that promotes democracy and religious freedom in Tibet and China. I'm Sakina Butt, and I'm the moderator for today's panel discussion on the Uyghur people and the Uyghur freedom struggle. The discussion today will delve into the Uyghur people's continued resilience, the challenges they face, and the need for urgent global solidarity in the struggle for freedom. We are honored to have two remarkable leaders in the Uyghur rights movement with us today. We have Rushan Abbas, founder of Campaign for Uyghurs, and Zubaira Shamsuddin, Chinese outreach coordinator at the Uyghur Human Rights Project and vice president of World Uyghur Congress. A very warm welcome to our dear panelists to AFI's Freedom Hour discussion. Assalamu alaikum. And I have deliberately kept the bio of our speakers quite short to save more time for the discussion. And I would like to inform our viewers that if you want to get the full bio of our speakers, you can always go to Asia Freedom Institute's website. And the agenda for today is we have 4 general questions and we have 3 individual questions for each of our speakers. And first, we will be starting off with the first individual questions of our speakers, for our speakers. So without further ado, I would like to start off with Rushan. So Rushan, let's talk about your journey. Your journey from witnessing the repression of the Cultural Revolution as a young girl to arriving to America in 1989 and dedicating your life to advocating for the Uyghur rights is nothing short of inspiring. This year, you were even honored with the Huntington Herd Hero Lifetime Achievement Award for your tireless work for the Uyghur people. Could you share with us what pivotal moments led you to this part of advocacy? And despite the overwhelming challenges, what continues to drive your passion to stand up for the Uyghur people and speak truth to power after all these years? Rushan, the screen is yours.
Thank you, Sakina, for having this important discussion with my dear friend Zubaira and myself. As you mentioned, my journey into advocacy truly began in my youth. If we look back since Mao's occupation of East Turkistan in 1949, the government has tried relentlessly to destroy our culture, religion, and identity. The Uyghurs have been persecuted under the labels of nationalists, counter-revolutionists, and separatists, and lastly, terrorists, particularly after the 9/11 tragedy in the United States. I was born in 1967 during the Cultural Revolution, a time of chaos when right and the wrong were turned upside down. As a young child, I witnessed the persecution of Uyghur intellectuals, community leaders, religious figures, business people, and even ordinary professors and teachers. My parents and grandparents were among them. Growing up, I witnessed firsthand and the persecution of the Uyghur people treated as second-hand citizens in our own homeland. My father, an intellectual and respected biologist, and worked as the head of the biology department at Xinjiang University, and my mother, a medical doctor, faced constant oppression under the Chinese regime. My grandpa was in jail for 3 years. My parents were taken to re-education camps multiple times during the Cultural Revolution. So this early experience shaped my understanding of injustice. And I also learned from my mother about the health inequities the Uyghurs were facing, particularly due to nuclear testing in our region. That's when I first began advocating at the university, speaking out against the birth control policies of the Uyghur women and the devastating effects of the nuclear testing. And when I came to the United States in 1989, more than 35 years ago, I was 21 years old. I was in search of something we did not have back home, which is the freedom and democracy. While I was involved in advocacy in some capacity, I remained as a part-time volunteer, person, as with my passion to build while I was building my family and career. But fast forward to 2017, when this mass detention and incarceration began, we learned 24 members of my husband's entire family went missing with mass detention and the building of the concentration camps. So September 2018, I spoke out at the panel at Hudson Institute against China's genocidal policies and describing the fate of my in-laws. Just 5 days after that panel, my own sister, Dr. Gulshan Abbas, was taken. It was a clear attempt to silence me and my advocacy. That moment changed my entire life. A year later, the September 2019, I left my full-time job and became a full-time activist. And I have been fighting ever since. Why? Because they have my dear sister, and my passion and the drive come from the deep love I have for my sister, for my people, for freedom and democracy. And I'm motivated every day by the need to see my sister free and to see my people are being free. And there's no greater force driving me than the desire to reunite with my sister and to see the freedom and democracy for my people.
Thank you so much, Rushan, for the detailed information about your experience in your childhood and the experiences that you had witnessing all your loved ones being sent to concentration camps, and also about your sister, which we will delve more into that later. Now, my question to Zubaira is, you've worked closely with the Chinese concentration camp survivors and contributed to investigate reports on the Uyghur crisis. Can you share your insights from these survivor stories that highlight the severity of China's repressive policies, and how does this information contribute to the global narrative on the Uyghur genocide? Zubaira.
Thank you, Sakina, for inviting me for this very important event. And I'm very honored to be with my best friend, Rushan, on the same panel. And it makes life much easier because we share lots of information together, so we don't have to explain everything in detail, which is fantastic. This is a great question, actually, especially talking about what's happening to Uyghurs since United States government and also a few other government and also entities recognize what's happening to Uyghurs as a genocide. So the what I have been through with the camp survivors and what they have told, not only just to me, through me to the world, it is actually just a live witness or what live testimony of the genocide. So severity, you say severity. I think it's this word is even it's less to describe what has happened to what's happening to Uyghur people, because as a person who listened to those camp survivors directly, it's just a beyond the imagination. It's very difficult to bear. It's just a horrific. To me, the most significant thing is, they are tortured, dehumanized, humiliated, repressed, and almost killed just simply because they were Uyghurs, nothing else, because they are all innocent. And I can tell you one story of one camp survivor. She's a very simple woman, like Trusnay Ziodin. She's a very simple woman. She did nothing. All she has done is she got married to a Kazakh national and a Kazakhstan citizen. And she went to Kazakhstan because it's quite normal for a woman to get married to a man and stay or live with a man together, wherever they met the man is. So the Kazakh national, she got married to, and she moved to Kazakhstan, and she lived in Kazakhstan for 5 years. And after she came back, she got arrested and detained in the concentration camp. That's simply because she stayed in Kazakhstan and lived her marriage life, and came back as a Uyghur, and she had to be detained and tortured. And she has been through tremendous, undescribable, horrific experience in the concentration camps simply because she's a Uyghur woman and came back from other country. So that's the situation. Even when she first came to East Turkistan through Gulja-Qorgos border, she came with her husband together, but her husband was able to leave because he was Kazakh and a Kazakh national and Kazakh citizen. But she had to stay back just simply because she was a Uyghur, and she had to be detained, she had to be tortured, and she had to confess the crimes she had never ever committed, and she had to be kind of dehumanized completely. It's very difficult for me to describe what she has been through. Especially for me, it's horrific to hear how she faced gang rape and how she was administered unknown medicines, how her hair was cut without her consent, how she had to the witness the every night the horror that the women face, how the women were taken away without the permission, middle of the night, by the Chinese guards, all that black suit, masked man, just to take away with the excuse of interrogation. In reality, it was just a horrific torture. What the woman had been through, it's just a horrific. And how she witnessed sterilizing women, including girls, has never been married. They were not even 20 years old, some of the women who got sterilized. And this kind of horrific situation, it's just unbearable sometimes. It's very difficult. I don't know how to tell. It's just hearing directly as a first-hand account. It's something just unbearable. So from that, what do we call what's happening to Uyghurs? It's not something significant. It's not something something that described with the language. It is clear, obvious genocide against the Uyghurs and our people facing complete killing by the Chinese authorities simply because they are Uyghurs and Uyghur people. And I don't wish to detail other horrific stories by the witnesses as well, because this is not only one, this is just one example. I also was able to directly communicate with Zumrat Daud, another camp survivor, Sayra Gul, Mehri Gul Tursun, Gulbahar Hatwaji, Qalbinur Siddiq, all the women who's been through in the Chinese concentration camps. Each story is different. Each story tells different perspective of what's happening to Uyghurs. It's from forced labor to sterilization, from gang rape to dehumanization, from forcing them to memorize Chinese all so-called laws or Xi Jinping words to just to let them sit in the chair, small chair, and looking at the TV and listen to Xi Jinping talk. Everything, that each woman's story tells different perspective of the genocide, the horrific experience that Uyghurs have been through. And I wasn't able to talk to any men, but I did before, not just concentration camp survivors, other people, other political prisoners who has been into Chinese prisons, jails, and including even my brother is in jail right now as a political prisoner. So all stories are just horrific. When you talk about Uyghurs are facing genocide, many people think as if we kind of making up story, which is China is doing right now. But in reality, it's not. This is whatever I have heard is first-hand account. The people who have been through this horrific situation and the people who themselves directly experienced that horrific experience. So this is really genocide. I'm thankful for American government and other people, other entities, organizations, anyone, the parliaments who recognize what's happened to Uyghurs, a genocide. It is truly genocide. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zubaira, for sharing with us the first-hand information that you've heard from the concentration camp survivors. And it is also really sad how women always have to go through double suppression. In this Uyghur case, one is being an Uyghur, and secondly is for just being a woman. Thank you, Zubaira, for this really detailed information. And while China's repression against the Uyghurs and other Turkic Muslims has received increasing attention, can you share with our audience the latest situation on the ground? What are the biggest developments and most critical challenges that you and your organizations and the community are currently trying to address? Rushan, we'll start with you again.
It's extremely difficult to sit and listen to the atrocities, especially when Zubaira described very eloquently of the former camp victims' personal experiences. As we see, our homeland, East Turkistan, is an open-air prison for everyone out there. The Uyghurs live under constant surveillance and repression, and where even the smallest experience of culture or faith or ethnic identity can lead to arrest for people. Authorities conduct random home searches, and people are forbidden from moving freely without government permission. Guests must be reported to the police within 2 hours of arrival. The CCP is systematically erasing the Uyghur identity. The Uyghur language is banned in schools, and the children are being manipulated to spy on their parents for so-called illegal activities at home. And China wants the world to believe that it closed the concentration camps and that detainees have been released. This is a lie. Almost 70% of the Uyghurs who were detained in the camps, and nobody committed any crimes. They were just taken away from their homes to the camps. Now they have been transferred to the prisons with harsh sentencing, and the others are forced into labor camps as modern-day slaves or remain trapped in the detention system. The camp system hasn't ended. They are evolved. And even with the cosmetic changes the CCP made to whitewash the genocide, it continues to build the new camp centers or re-education centers to detain more people today under the pretext of regional development and counterterrorism. Just last year in 2023, over 70 Uyghurs were detained in one single city for nothing more than holding onto their cultural identity. One woman, after already serving 10 years for teaching Quran, and then she was sentenced again for same crime for additional 14 years. Another man received an 18-year sentence just recently for the opposed crime of making charitable donations to Uyghur families. So basically, the Uyghurs cannot even help other Uyghur families with charitable donations, and that's their crimes. The CCP isn't just targeting people, it's seizing Uyghur lands and the livelihood, dismantling the economic stability, and use forced labor to further its goals. So basically, this genocide is making the companies using Uyghur forced labor, making Uyghur genocide a profitable venture for the Chinese government. So at the Campaign for Uyghurs, while we are raising awareness, mobilizing civil societies, organizations, and grassroots movements to address Uyghur genocide, we are focused on amplifying the voices of Uyghur victims, survivors, and their family members, exposing China's atrocities, and pushing for international action. We work to secure stronger sanctions with governments and raise a global awareness and counter China's aggressive disinformation campaign. One of our biggest challenges is convincing the international community to hold China accountable despite its vast economic power. But we will not stop. We are committed to ensuring that the world knows the truth about the ongoing Uyghur genocide, and we will continue to fight for justice for the Uyghur people until every voice is heard and every life is free.
Thank you so much, Rushan. Zubaira, let's hear your perspective on this.
That's great. The Russian eloquently describe what's happening to Uyghurs in East Turkestan. I mean, I don't have to say more than that. I mean, it's quite very great, everything in detail. Just additionally, whatever Roshan already pointed out is mostly, it's based on the documentation. Actually, based on the revelation, the Chinese authority, Chinese police file, the Xinjiang file. The official documents revealed all these evidences, and that the research Adrian Zans and a few other researchers also documented. Also, ASPI, Australian Strategic Institute, also documented all these atrocities that happened to Uyghurs, which is Roshan, absolutely described everything. So it's there. That's what's happening, and on top of that, still, no matter what the Chinese government, it tried to scrutinize, to put pressure. That the restriction is very hard. The Chinese authority doesn't want to disclose any information. In many ways they restrict to the true information out. But although there are ways of getting it out, and there are a huge documentation that the China can't deny that what's happening to Uyghurs is genocide, but still we see the restrictions. So that's one challenge, that especially when we want to document what's happening to Uyghurs and the current development, that's one challenge for Uyghurs and Uyghur organizations, especially research-based documentation organization like Uyghur Human Rights Project. For us, this is one challenge. But still, and also China's transnational repression, it's another challenge, because again, China tried to repress not only just Uyghurs inside East Turkestan, even outside of East Turkestan. Right now, the China, saying that, there is nothing is happening, no genocide. They try to organize the foreign tourists to come to East Turkestan, even organize some Muslim country delegates to come to East Turkestan and they see for themselves, and reporters as well. At the same time, to taking the relatives as a hostage of the Uyghurs who lives overseas to not speak out anymore. And in reality, there are many, many camp survivors living in Central Asia and many other countries that we hear unofficially, but they don't speak out because of China's hostage repression or transnational repression, that they try to shut down all Uyghur voices. This is another big issue for us as well, and this needs to be addressed. And there should be action taken against China's this type of totalitarian, as well as transnational repression as well. It's not only just the Uyghur community are facing, the Chinese, Democrats, Tibetans, Mongols, just anyone who speaks against China and the Chinese expansionist authoritarian control regime is facing that kind of transnational repression. This is another challenge that we face all the time. But that doesn't mean that the genocide has stopped in East Turkestan. That doesn't mean that Uyghurs are not experiencing any repression. They are, because we can see even with since the China recently opened up the border, saying that welcome all the Uyghurs or even other Chinese, whoever, the people can come to East Turkestan and visit themselves. But we hear unofficially that those visitors are not free. They are all for foreigners. Everything is staged. For Uyghurs who are visiting single or kind of as a family or visitors, they are monitored as well. Whoever will come at them is not the real relatives. The officials, neighborhood committee people, the Chinese authority are monitoring them, sleeping with them, staying together with them. So it doesn't mean that kind of free travel as well, but that's what we hear unofficially. But that seems the kind of situation. So to us, the biggest challenge is countering China's disinformation, misinformation, and transnational repression right now. These situations should be addressed by the international community. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Zubaira. And we did have an episode on transnational repression as well in Asia Freedom Institute. And thank you so much for mentioning this really important topic. Because this is something, like you mentioned, that it's not just the Uyghurs who are experiencing transnational repression, but also the Tibetan people and other ethnic minorities as well. And speaking about hostages, recently the European Parliament passed a landmark resolution calling for sanctions and demanding the release of unjustly imprisoned Uyghurs like Professor Ilham Tohti and Rushan, your sister, Dr. Gulshan Abbas, who was unjustly sentenced due to your outspoken criticism of the Chinese regime. How significant is this resolution in advancing global accountability for China's actions? Additionally, how has your documentary, In Search of My Sister, helped in raising awareness and highlighting China's repressive policies? Do you believe that these tactics of fear and repression are silencing human rights activists who fear for their families in East Turkestan? Because this happens a lot, even in the Tibetan community, because whenever any Tibetan activists, they try to speak regarding the rights of the Tibetan people, it is their families who are being targeted back in Tibet. So do you think that this is this kind of tactics is helping in silencing the human rights activists? And if it is, then what can be done to stop this, Rushan?
That is a very important question. And thanks, Zubaira, for pointing out the importance of the documentation and the China's belated crimes as the transnational repression and as well as spread of disinformation, misinformation, and false narratives. Of course, transnational repression creates fear, and the those repression are the main tactics of the Chinese government through, as Zubaira mentioned, transnational repression, and the many Uyghur activists remain silent, fearing for their families, and they are still targeting the Uyghurs abroad using surveillance, intimidation, and the threats to silence us, basically. As my sister is a good example of this. The message from the CCP is very clear. Basically, if you speak out, they will punish your family and they will destroy everything that you love. As you mentioned, the resolution passed by the European Parliament on October 10th, it's a significant step to holding China accountable for its ongoing human rights abuses, including the unjust imprisonment of Uyghurs like Professor Ilham Tohti and my sister, Gulshan Abbas, a retired medical doctor. And highlighting these individual cases, the EU member states, highlighting the individual cases, the European Parliament took a major step, but now the EU member states must follow the suit by passing national resolutions and enforcing real consequences, such as targeted sanctions. And also, it's important to implement legislation like Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act that we have in the United States. Without concrete, tangible action, just the resolutions risk being symbolic rather than impactful. So you mentioned the documentary In Search of My Sister, which this film has played a crucial role in raising awareness and the driving conversations about the genocide, as well as giving the Uyghurs count for pushing the China's disinformation and the false narratives. So this documentary, In Search of My Sister, has been screened in more than 30 countries to date right now. We have screened in different governments and US embassies around the world, as well as universities, think tanks, and just the general cinema and the film festivals. Within these countries, we reached lawmakers, civil society organizations, and the public, showing them our journey and our tragedy in a powerful visual narrative. As it doesn't only speak about my advocacy or my sister's story, but also many of the Uyghur activists and many of the former camp victims that Zubaira mentioned earlier, they are all being interviewed, and as well as the Uyghur, the Western scholars who's working on the Uyghur issue, and as well as, there is enough airtime given for China's narratives. So it's not just taking the Uyghur side, but it has the story of both sides. So I think the film does a great job of highlighting the personal stories of the Uyghurs, and also countless researchers, academics who played a role in unveiling the atrocities. And if I just add one more, to stop this, stop China's transnational repression and stop this genocide, we do need the international community to act and address that transnational repression. A government such as the CCP should not be able to reach their long arm across the borders and repress people living in the free world, as you mentioned, the Tibetans as well as victims of transnational repression, and the Hong Kongers and the Southern Mongolians, whoever speaks out against China, they are being targeted. We must impose sanctions, apply diplomatic pressure, and continuously expose the truth that the transnational repression and keen punishment will not be tolerated. Only then can we break the cycle of fear and repression.
Thank you so much, Rushan. And I also wanted to ask, where can we watch the documentary, In Search of My Sister?
Yes, now it's online. You can watch it in Amazon Prime, Apple TV, and also on the Tubi for free. Also contact us if you want to organize any kind of private screenings. I just want to mention one more thing here. Like in December 10th, in Human Rights Day, when the film was being released back in 2022, Beijing was so scared from this because they're always scared of the truth. So they called special press conference in Beijing, number 81 press conference, to condemn this documentary, In Search of My Sister, and to condemn myself. So, we take that as a strong impact of the documentary.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rushan. And Zubaira, your work extends to supporting Uyghur youth and community development. And also, given your experience at the Center for Women, Faith and Leadership, how important is it to engage the younger generation and women to take leadership roles in the movement for Uyghur rights and freedom? Zubaira.
Thank you. That's a great question. Sometimes I think that, we Uyghurs have one saying, that means I hope this ends with us only. I hope that I don't have to, or all the the Uyghur movement leaders don't have to educate our young generation, future generation, about fighting for freedom, or fighting for stop the genocide, all sort of atrocities. I hope that we educate our generation to live freely, live in free East Turkistan, and have their great lives, the future, have their own ambition, establish this great future for themselves in independent, free places. But unfortunately, this fight is started since 1949, and it's continuing. And my father used to say that I wish it ends with me, so you can live your free life, but it didn't, unfortunately, and that's what's happening right now for us. So it is very important for us to educate women and the young people to fight for our freedom continuously, continue this fight, because they are our hope. We did, and we've been doing what we can, but to me, a young generation, young people can do more than we can do, because I'm very hopeful, because they have new ideas, new visions, and new thinking, new way of thinking things, and I'm sure they will be very successful in defending our freedom in the future and make East Turkestan free. To me, it's very important whether, from my education that I had at Institute for Global Engagement, Women and Faith Leadership, that group, it was very inspiring a program that it's very important, even if we have freedom one day, we will be free in East Turkistan. But having that type of training, education is crucial for us, for our future, especially for young generation and the women. As you know, the Uyghur women are very vocal and very productive and very strong. And I believe that one because that I inherited from my mother, and I will definitely send into my daughter and the future generations. That's what's going to happen. So the when women and the children, young people stand up, and nothing can stop them, and nothing can kind of obstruct the way of moving forward. And only women, children, women will stand up when something goes really, really bad and wrong. Because at that point, we would say that, look, this is something, it's not just a kind of man's duty or someone else's duty, it's everyone's duty. So this is what's happening. This is the situation that Uyghurs are facing right now. It doesn't matter, it's man, woman, young and old. It doesn't matter because our land has been occupied and our people been suppressed, and now they are facing extinction and a genocide. So this is crucial. It doesn't matter whether I'm in the middle age and another person is in old age and my children are still very young. It doesn't matter. Everybody needs to know. Everybody needs to understand. And it's our duty and it's our obligation to move forward and keep fighting. So, and you can see, we have lots of young generation, young people's freedom movement as well, and they are quite active, and they do the movements are in different way. It can be many ways. The fighting for freedom is just the one. It's not just the one thing. Like right now, organizing such a discussions and make aware the world what's happening from the voice of Roshan and myself and many other ladies. And also there are young people who are organizing different events like a cultural protection, academic thriving, or doing different things, sport activity, just in many way, because we Uyghurs are not only just kind of victim. We have many things that the world can learn from us, about us. Not only, I don't wish that the world learn that the Uyghurs are just the victims of Chinese genocide, Chinese government genocide against Uyghurs, because there are many things that the world can learn about Uyghurs, and Uyghurs can contribute into the world as well. So whether it's academic area, for example, I can say that in America, our Uyghur population is very small compared to other migrants, but there are figurable and amazing people who are contributing in the government sector, academic sector, other sectors, community work, everything. So that means the Uyghurs are not only fighting for freedom, and we also fighting for who we are, and let world know that we are contributors to the world as well. Protecting Uyghurs, it doesn't mean that you're just protecting Uyghurs. It means that you're protecting humanity. And stopping China's genocide against Uyghurs, it doesn't mean it's just you stopping China from killing so-called minority Uyghurs of China. No, it doesn't mean like that. Uyghurs can contribute, can fight, can manage, can live their own lives, and they can lead their own country and their own people as well. So this is that kind of people. So for that, actually all this showing by our new generation, because that's what young people can show and showcasing to the world as well. And that's what young people are doing right now. So it is very important. And every job, everything is because of the people like myself and Roshan, all other leaders who are seeing that future. So this is very important, and it's led by the current leaders, and it's inspired by what's happening to the world and who we are finding our identity as Uyghurs. So yes, this is crucial job, and it's happening. It's happened before, and it's going to happen, and it will continue forever until we're free. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zubaira, and I completely agree with you. Uyghur women, especially, are very vocal and they are very strong. And any Uyghur women that I was introduced to till now, they are very strong and they are very vocal and very smart. And I think it's a very powerful line that you said. We really hope that we don't have to educate our younger generation regarding advocacy and all of that, because everyone deserves freedom, and inshallah we will experience that someday. Thank you so much, Zubaira. And speaking about women, Zubaira had already mentioned a lot regarding women initially, but now I would like to know both your perspectives regarding Uyghur women who are playing a prominent role in advocating for greater rights and freedom for the Uyghur people. Can you share your insights on the specific atrocities Uyghur women face under the Chinese regime, and the role and contribution of the Uyghur women in the Uyghur resistance and freedom movement? Rushan, will start with you.
That is a great, very important question, because as I always say, the Uyghur women's bodies are being the battleground of this genocide, as the CCP has been controlling the Uyghur women's bodies in a calculated attempt to erase Uyghur population. The evidence is undeniable. Testimonies, leaked documents, open source data have exposed the horrific reality that Uyghur women are being forcibly sterilized, subject to forced abortions, and coerced into forced marriages with Han Chinese men. In some Uyghur regions, birth rate growth has recently dropped to nearly 0%. And if a woman dares to resist, she's labeled as extremist and sent to detention. As you know, Dr. Adrian Zanz, a leading expert on this crisis, said that the Chinese regime controls Uyghur population growth like turning a faucet on and off. And this is nothing short of genocide. Even more horrific in the fact that the Chinese state media, their own Chinese media reported actually 1.1 million Han Chinese cat-dressed mostly men have been sent to live in Uyghur homes to monitor their daily lives and to supervise them. And most of the Uyghur men are in detention or in forced labor facilities or in prison. The Uyghur women are subject to sexual abuse in their own homes. This isn't just about, birth control or a systematic, this is a systematic campaign to destroy Uyghur families' culture and identity from inside out. The Chinese government claims that they are liberating Uyghur women. They even posted on the Chinese embassy's official Twitter account that Uyghur women are liberated, emancipated, and they are no longer baby-making machines. Let me be clear. There is no liberation in taking away a woman's right to bear and raise her children in accordance with her faith. There is no liberation in forcing a woman into marriage that she does not want. This is not the freedom. This is the oppression. This is a clear aspect of a genocide, pure and simple. And we are disappointed to witness that international community, especially Hollywood celebrities, famous, actors, celebrities, talk show hosts, and feminists and advocates are still silent. They are all silent against such atrocities against Uyghur women. Yet, in the face of such a brutality, Uyghur women in diaspora have risen as the pillars of resistance. And I have heard countless mothers say they feel an even stronger obligation to fight because they are building a future for the next generations. And Zubaira also described this very clearly, because these Uyghur mothers know that the struggle is not just about survival, but it's about preserving our identity, our faith, our culture. And the Uyghur women are at the heart of this movement, holding our people together. And they are not only the caretakers of our traditions, but also the torch barriers of our resistance. Their courage is our lifeblood, and their fight for freedom is our foundation.
Thank you so much, Rushan, for this really important information regarding the atrocities inflicted on the Uyghur women. Zubaira, let's hear your perspective on this.
Thank you. I mean, Rushan already said many things. I think I just wish to add a little. One that I wish to mention is the repression, the atrocity that the China is inflicting us. The purpose is to humiliate or dehumanize or completely make us disappear. But in reality, that repression is making not only Uyghur women, Uyghurs stronger. That's what I see. Like definitely, the brainwashing, the repression, torture, dehumanization it is just horrific. But that didn't really kind of made Uyghurs give up everything. So to me, they made Uyghurs, especially Uyghur women, stronger. Like for example, as I mentioned before, those camp survivors, they are fighting non-stop since they left China, and they didn't fear. Although the China investing so much, and they even tried to distribute disinformation through video, like forcing the relatives to speak out against those camp survivors. And I think that's nothing going to be more horror than your own blood relative speaking against you. But to me, those women are so strong. They said they are under force, they are under gun. That's why they are speaking out against me. It doesn't mean that from their heart they are standing against me, because I have to continue my fight. And that's how strong the Uyghur women are. You can see I just shared 2 articles. One is published by Foreign Policy about Uyghur women, China's victims and the resistance. In this article highlights how the Uyghur woman became China's victim as well as strongest resistant. So I highly recommend people to read this article as well. And another article that I have written in 2019 and published in China File about Uyghur women. That also describes the resistance by the Uyghur women as well. And from the life experience, the live experience right now, for example, Ms. Rabia Kadir, she led Uyghur movement for over 10 years, nearly 10 years, 10 years, that's correct. She was a woman as well, she took the Uyghur movement in another stage. So she's still alive. And there are so many other women in the diaspora that keep fighting. And those articles are, elaborates everything quite clearly and very in detail. So I don't have to talk about it. I just shared the link in here. And you can share it to the public as well, Sakina, thank you. So to me, the resistance, the fighting, it's something that ingrained our heart since our land occupied. It doesn't matter how China tried to destroy us, how China tried to make us completely just to disappear. It won't happen. It won't happen, because as I told you before, as a person who heard first-hand account from those people who faced this atrocity, even myself, the same thing. Like my grandparents, my father, my brother, my sisters, I have lost so many family members for this cause. But I won't stop, because the genocide, the atrocities happening to whole people, all the people, not only just my family or Roshan's family. It's happening to everybody. Everyone will resist. So that means China can't contain us. We will fight. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zubaira, for this really powerful statement. And now let's shift the gear a little bit. Roshan, you've mentioned that the Uyghur region is not only rich in natural resources, but also holds strategic importance for China's Belt and Road Initiative, making it a vital point for China's economic and political ambitions. Under the pretext of countering terrorism, the Chinese government has attempted to eradicate Uyghur culture and religion. So, how do you view this role of economic interest in contributing to repression in East Turkistan, Roshan?
Economic interests are at the heart of China's brutal repression and these genocidal policies in East Turkestan against the Uyghurs. This region isn't just rich in natural resources, like you mentioned, like oil, gas, and the rare precious minerals. It's also strategic for China's Belt and Road Initiative. And East Turkestan connects China to markets across Central Asia, Europe, Middle East, and beyond, making it an important location for China's economic and political ambitions. And these ambitions have fueled China's genocidal policies against the Uyghurs right now. Under the pretext of countering terrorism, Beijing is systematically attempting to eradicate the Uyghur culture, language, and religion to secure an absolute control over the land and over our people. By erasing the Uyghur identity, the CCP believes it will guarantee political stability in East Turkestan while maintaining the flow of resources and economic benefits to China. And that's why when this detention centers first established, Hu Lianhe, one of the Chinese officials, said very openly that the Uyghur issue must have taken to the final solution stage, referring to World War II, the Holocaust. So the exploitation of the Uyghurs through forced labor, mass detention, even blood extraction feeds directly into China's economic machine. Nearly every sector, from apparel to solar panels, lithium for electronic vehicle batteries and seafood, and even medications, is tainted by Uyghur forced labor. And yet, despite the evidence and widespread international outcries, corporations like Scatters continue to profit from this genocide, and they knowingly expand their operations into my homeland and benefiting from forced labor. Just recently, just last week, we learned in a report released by C4ADS, and just a couple of weeks ago, they released that 76 pharmaceutical production, including common medications like just the painkillers, like we take in acetaminophen and Tylenol and Advil, they are being produced in the Uyghur region with the blood, sweat, and tears of my people. This is a regime that knows no moral limits. So we must confront these economic drivers head on. Sanctions, divestment, and the cutting off the economic incentive intensifies that sustain these atrocities are extremely essential. Without directly targeting the financial foundation of Beijing's genocide, our efforts will remain insufficient. So we cannot allow the world to continue profiting from the enslavement of the Uyghur people. This isn't just a human rights issue. This is a moral imperative for the international community.
Thank you so much, Roshan, for giving us this really important information. And moving on to Zubaira. As someone who has supported the Chinese concentration camp survivors and contributed to global efforts for Uyghur rights, how do you maintain hope and resilience in the face of such overwhelming repression? Can you share with us about your personal experiences that have inspired you to continue pushing for change? Zubaira.
Thank you. This is difficult question, but important question. We don't have any luxury to stop. We have to fight. We have to fight back. I mean, if we don't fight, our generation will suffer, and the more suffer will appear. And not only our generation, maybe world will suffer, because we Uyghurs became a experiment lab for the Chinese atrocities, for Chinese repression. So whatever Chinese government has done to Uyghurs actually moved to different places. They adopt in other places, mainland China. Now look at Hong Kong. Now look at Taiwan's fate. Just look at the world, around you, what's happening. So, I mean, that that's what always I think. If we don't fight, and it's our duty. It's not only just the mind. Every human being think in that way, because in Islam there's one saying, like, if Muslims is kind of one body. If your one part of body is aches, your whole body will ache, and it's same thing. That's how it should apply. Like, it's the Uyghurs are part of humanity. If one part of humanity aches or suffers, the whole body does. That means whole humanity would do. And the most inspiration comes to me is, it's not only just because of the Uyghurs victims, and we should not be not that way. We became the target of this atrocity because of who we are, right? And this is going to happen to others as well. Definitely. I mean, that's happening, and that's why. And to me, I said, if I stop China's genocide against my people, if I save my people, not start from my family, for example, at least if I can save my brother who's in jail right now, or another relative who disappeared right now, I could contribute to saving my people. If I save my people, I could contribute to humanity and to tell the world that, look, China should stop. You should stop China. And that's the message that I wish to give. This kind of hope, this kind of feeling obligation and duty gives me inspiration to keep fight. And why I say I don't have any luxury to stop, because you should not stop. And how could you? And I just can't imagine, even sometimes how the governments, NGOs, some entities don't feel in that way. Aren't you constitute of human beings? Don't you see the danger? Don't you see the horror could you face one day? So the China's atrocity, one way is horrific, one way is a source of inspiration for me to keep fight injustice in the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zubaira. And now we have last two general questions. And I request our speakers to please keep it not very long, like within the time limit, because I think we are about to exceed our time. So let me start with Rushan again. Rushan, we all know that China is celebrating the 75 years anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China this month. However, its human rights violations have only worsened with continued disregard for the UN human rights system and international laws, and widespread abuses against the Uyghurs and other communities like the Tibetans, the Southern Mongolians, the Chinese Christians, and others. China continues to frame its actions in East Turkistan as counterterrorism and regional development efforts, like we've mentioned earlier. So, how are you and your organizations countering the Chinese narrative? And what concrete steps are being taken to hold China accountable for its treatment of the Uyghurs and other Turkic Muslims? Rushan.
China's celebration of the 75th anniversary of PRC is deeply overshadowed by its worsening human rights violations, from the genocide of the Uyghurs to the repression of countless ethnic and religious groups like Tibetans, Falun Gong, and what's happening in Hong Kong, and to many others. At Campaign for Uyghurs, we are actively countering China's false narratives. by exposing the truth about the ongoing genocide and repression, that this is not, counterterrorism at China is falsely perpetrating. We recently submitted a stakeholder report for China's Universal Periodic Review at the United Nations, and our Campaign for Uyghur Submission was referenced 6 times in the official summary of the report, including the mention of this genocide. So it's a critical achievement because it puts the Uyghur crisis on the record in front of global leaders and the UN, despite China's attempted to control the narrative. And we are also confronting the blatant propaganda pushed by figures like Alina Dohan, the UN Special Rapporteur on the negative impact of unilateral coercive measures. She recently released a report claiming that sanctions placed on China, particularly by countries like United States, are crimes against humanity. This is outrage, what she's saying. The statement is outrage is a clear reflection of China's influence, as her office has received substantial funding from the Chinese government, and her report attempted to shift the narrative, but we are ensuring the world sees through this facade. So our work is not, our work is far from over. And we are making sure that the world leaders and international bodies know that we are watching. We continue to amplify Uyghur voices and to push for accountability around the world. Sanctions, legal actions, and the continuous international pressure are the key holding the CCP responsible for those atrocities. We will not allow China's propaganda to bury the truth, and we will continue to demand justice for Uyghur people and all those suffering under the Chinese regime's oppressive rules. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rushan. Zubaira, let's hear your perspective.
I just add shortly, to me, the China is celebrating, but we have nothing to celebrate for us, Uyghurs, Tibetans, Mongols, all the people under occupation, China's occupation. We have nothing to celebrate. And we telling the world that, nothing to celebrate with many ways, which is, again, Roshan already eloquently described the old atrocities that China is doing, but at the same time is the international community is not acting well as well, which is correct. But there should be kind of, effective countering China's atrocity against us. This should be effective and a meaningful way. That's the most important thing. Like, for example, in here, I wish to highlight that we, as an Uyghur organization, whether it's Uyghur Human Rights Project, World Uyghur Congress, just any Uyghur organization, or any organization that who concerns about what's happening to Uyghurs, or any government, they should take action right now. It's time for acting. It's not just a talking. For example, right now, there are 5 legislation in America already became law, and those laws should be implemented vigorously and actively and strongly. If that happens, that also stop China's genocide against Uyghurs. Like, for example, preventing forced labor, the Prevention of Uyghur Forced Labor Act, Uyghur Human Rights Policy Act, and Stop Uyghur Genocide Act. There are all, 5 laws there are. If every law implemented effectively, and it's gonna contribute something into Stop China. And also there are 12 legislation in pending in US government. Those legislation should be passed too. All of them doesn't mention Uyghur on the title, but they also will contribute in stopping China to commit this genocide against the Uyghurs as well. So at the same time, that kind of, whether it's legal way or other ways, supporting should continue worldwide, not only just the United States. The European governments, parliaments, and other places, even other countries, Muslim countries, Southeast Asian, all countries should realize what would happen to their government and the people if they don't stop China and contribute to stop the China's genocide against Uyghurs. Because as I told you a million times, mentioned you many times, the Uyghur genocide, it doesn't mean just the Uyghur genocide. What Chinese government doing to Uyghurs is it's crimes against humanity. It's not just the crimes against the Uyghurs, it's against humanity. That what should be understood deeply and clearly, and the world should act accordingly. So that's the thing I wish to add. And definitely, as a Uyghur organization and Uyghur people, we continue to fight, but that fight should not be just alone to Uyghurs. It's fight of everybody, everyone on earth. So we should be together and fighting together. Thank you.
Definitely, Zubaira, totally with you on that. And beyond the Uyghurs, we see the same repressive policies targeting the Tibetans, the Southern Mongolians, the Taiwanese, Hong Kongers, Falun Gong practitioners, and Chinese Christians under the CCP. Given the vast scale and power of the Chinese regime, what do you see as the potential for building alliances among these communities? How can we bring these diverse voices together into a unified, powerful movement to effectively challenge China's authoritarianism? Rushan, in one of your talks, I remember you mentioning that your organization has a coalition with over 200 organizations. So, can you give us more information on that, Rushan?
Yeah, actually, all of the Uyghur organizations, including the World Uyghur Congress and Zubaira's organization and our organization, we all belong to the coalition and the Uyghur forced labor, and we work together. Zubaira described brilliantly that this crime is not against the only. This is not only against the Uyghurs, but against all humanity. And as she mentioned earlier, that we have a saying, I hope it ends with us. But the Chinese regime's oppression does not and will not end with the Uyghurs or Tibetans or Falun Gong or Hong Kongers, or not even the Chinese government will not even stop only with taking over Taiwan. Under the CCP, the goal is very clear: to suppress any identity, any culture or belief system that does not conform with their authoritarian rule, and that they will not allow any freedom and democracy to survive. So inside China, many of us are divided by geography, by the CCP's relentless propaganda, by the overwhelming surveillance that makes the solidarity difficult. Dialogue and understanding between these communities can be nearly impossible within China's borders. However, in the free world, we have the opportunity to come together and build a real solidarity. In the diaspora, also, even in the diaspora, the divisions can persist because the Chinese government tried to rule everyone by dividing and conquer. CCP's black arm is long. Sometimes resources are scarce, and we know attention spans can be short, but it's critical for us to uplift one another to ensure that no community and no cause is left behind in our shared struggle. And we must identify the intersections between our issues and use them to amplify our voices, because when we scream together, all of us, Tibetans and Uyghurs and Southern Mongolians and Hong Kongers, when we scream together, our voice is stronger. When we unite together, we are stronger, we fight stronger. So while our individual struggle may differ, but the root of our oppression is the same. So our enemy is the same, and we shall overcome all obstacles and the fight for justice. As you know, my favorite quote, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice." And I believe that justice will prevail. The CCP built the groundwork of the oppressive surveillance systems and genocidal policies in Tibet as well. And then now we see it in a full form in our homeland, East Turkistan. And recently we witnessed Hong Kong stripped of its freedom and democracy. And the lesson is undeniable. No one is safe from this regime. Genocide paves the way for more genocides, and unchecked, it spreads like a wildfire. If we do not stand up for the CCP today, the same tactics of surveillance, forced labor, and the brutal repression will eventually come for all of us. This is a fight in between right and wrong, and a fight between good and the evil. And we are not just fighting for Uyghurs or Tibetans or Falun Gong practitioners or Christians in China or Southern Mongolians and the Taiwanese, but we are fighting to protect the freedom and democracy that we have worked so hard to build for centuries and for last, decades in the West. We are shaping our future and the future of the generations to come. Because if we choose not to fight today, we will have no choice tomorrow. If we don't speak out against China's repression today, the only ways left will be one of regret. So we have to fight for the Uyghurs' future, but more than anything, we have to fight for the freedom and democracy of the world.
Thank you so much, Rushan. Zubaira, let's hear your perspective.
Okay, thank you. Just to add shortly, it is, I don't have to tell, it is very important to be united against the China's atrocities. The suffer of Uyghurs is not just alone, it's definitely Tibetans are suffering the same oppression that we've been facing. And in the Mongolians, which is Southern Mongolians, is the same. And there are many other people, definitely Chinese Democrats as well. In this regard, as a Uyghur Human Rights Project, we have initiated China's Outreach Project. This was initiated long before, it's decades ago, like 2012. And the purpose of this project also to build bridge between the Chinese democratic movement, so we can work together, because our enemy is the same. We all against the Chinese repression and Chinese government repression. The same goes to Tibetans. To me, since I am in this fight movement, I think it's been over almost 3 decades now. From my memory, we always work with Tibetans together. Wherever, whatever cause, we always together, because we don't have to explain a lot to each other, because we know that our suffer is exactly the same. So we know what to do, we know what to fight for. So it's quite clear. The same thing with through this project, the Uyghur Human Rights Projects, that initiative, we were able to build a strong relationship with other Chinese democratic movement too. For example, as you said, Chinese Christians. We work very closely together with the China Aid, which is led by Bob Fu. It's very strong Christian promotion, the Chinese Christianity promotion organization, which is doing great job for many decades. And also we have a lot in common as well, because religious repression is very strong against Uyghurs too. That's one of the key, the target that the China is targeting Uyghurs because of the religion. And that's another key issue. So for us, it's great to work with all these groups, and definitely we do have a solidarity to each other, and the always and the forever, until we get our freedom. That's very obvious. And Rushan already mentioned there is a coalition of over 200 organizations in the coalition to end Uyghur forced labor. And although we call it Uyghur forced labor, and that's connects to everything, whatever Chinese production that connects to or taint to with forced labor, that coalition will be noted, that coalition will be taken China to accountable. So it's very important as well. And definitely, as I've worked with the Uyghur Human Rights Project, my colleagues in Advocacy team, in the leadership group of that coalition as well. And the same is for World Uyghur Congress, does the same thing. The World Uyghur Congress also a member of this coalition too. So what I am saying is not only us, like for example, I remember in 2012 when we first initiated China's outreach work at Uyghur Human Rights Project, first thing that I have done was contacting with ICT, Initiative campaign for Tibet, CIT, campaign for Tibet. I was able to communicate with the Chinese outreach coordinator of that organization because the thoughts was exactly the same. And the first thing I asked, what you've been doing to do this work better, making bridge with the Chinese democracy movement and building solidarity. And he said that right now we produced a journal. So through that journal, they were educating Chinese audiences about what's happening to Tibetans from Tibetans' perspective, which is that exactly what we've been doing at the Uyghur Human Rights Project as well, educating Chinese people from Uyghurs' perspective. As you know, China's huge propaganda always prevent even Chinese people to learn truth about what's happening to those people, especially about Uyghurs. The information, the propaganda, the disinformation distribution is its huge power too, to alienate our fight from the Chinese supporters or Chinese democratic movement. So that's another key issue for us to do, not only just from our perspective to educate them, and also willingness by those Chinese audience to accept what we try to make them understand. So that way, in double way, in two way, if we built a strong, understanding was supporting ideas, and then we can fight better with our enemy, which is Chinese communist government and the oppressor to all of us. So by saying that, definitely, I highly agree. All the voices, all the suppressed, oppressed voices should be together. We are stronger if we are together, and we will be weaker, and China will be very happy if we divide it and everybody fights their own war, own fight, which is that's what China wants, and that's what China wants to do everything, investing in transnational repression, investing in dividing, investing in inserting kind of hatred and not trust to each other. That's the biggest tactic that China was able to succeed in repressing. So to me, not only just to me, I'm sure whether Tibetans, Hong Kongers, the Mongols, Chinese Democrats, everybody wish to do the same thing. I'm sure everybody thinking the same way. I hope with that we can achieve what we wish to achieve. For me, freedom for East Turkestan. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zubaira, and thank you so much, Rushan. I'm so glad that we got such powerful speakers from the Uyghur community to speak on AFI's platform. Thank you all for joining today's insightful discussion on the Uyghur people and the Uyghur freedom struggle. We've explored not only the depth of the atrocities committed against the Uyghur people, but also the strength, the resilience, and the courage they continue to show in the face of unimaginable repression. The experiences shared by our panelists today remind us of the urgent need for collective action and solidarity. Thank you once again to our panelists and to all our viewers for being a part of this vital conversation. And before I end, I would like to say that the video for today's session will be uploaded on AFI's website at www.asiafreedominstitute.org, and please follow AFI's X, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram pages for more information on AFI's programs and activities. And we are also available both on Apple Podcast and YouTube. Thank you so much once again. It was lovely having you both here. The panel was really productive and very informative. We are so glad to have you both for today's conversation. Thank you so much.